Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Aliens and UFOs video. Alright, let's go ahead and we'll do another entry here based on your past suggestion. This one was suggested a couple of months back. I think it was actually sometime earlier this year. And this one is interesting because it continues the theme that seems to be with some of my past videos having to do with really weird alien encounters. So unlike, let's say, your average gray that has your traditional big head, small body, very characteristic of one another, this though seems to be something along the lines of some of my past videos where they have weird costumes, weird faces. As the mantra seems to be, it's like almost like a cheap sci-fi 1950s type costume, the kind that you see on late night TV when it comes to low budget type stuff. So I'm glad to be able to talk about this information here. So this encounter happened in 1975. In particular, it was for a two set of boys that had this face-to-face encounter, and it has to do with the entities or creatures known as the Kofu Fanged Humanoids, which you're looking at a picture of here or drawing of here. Instantly you'll see again why I picked this, like what I was just talking about a couple of seconds ago. Very, very distinctive, unlike pretty much anything else I have talked about in some of my past videos. So I'm so happy to share all the information here. So what were the Kofu Fanged Humanoids? Well, it was an incident that happened back in 1975, February 23rd to be exact, sometime around 7 p.m. And you're going to have to go to a location, I believe it was there near Mount Otago to be exact. The location also is near a place called the Hinodi Housing Estate at a city called Kamimachi, Kofu, Yamanashi. So somewhere there in Japan. This is where that occurred, specifically near the Hinode Housing Estate. So the two boys, they were, I guess, just hanging out somewhere after school. Maybe they were playing somewhere nearby. And that's when they noticed a pair of lights. The way they described it was a pair of glittering orange UFO lights. And they described it as frolicking in the sky above, maybe dancing with, not necessarily dancing, but almost appearing to dance off of one another, just moving in bizarre motions. And because, of course, this was an unusual sight, they dropped whatever they're doing and then tried to see where these things were going. And then sure enough, one of the items, the larger of the two orange UFO lights, it went off towards Mount Otago, while the other one actually came by closer to their location. Apparently that's the one that went to the Hinodi Housing Estate. It landed somewhere in a vineyard behind that estate. So by pure happen chance, because this thing, whatever it was, happened to be near them, they decided, of course, they wanted to go investigate it. Rather than being more scared, they're young boys, they were probably more curious about what they just saw. They did describe, though, that there was a strange sound that UFO was emitting, the one that landed nearby, almost like a ticking sound, like a Geiger counter would make. That's how they described it. So whenever they went up to that location, that's when they saw a much closer picture of it. It was there, it was on the ground, it was actually propped on the ground, like imagine as you would, let's say, your average UFO movie showcasing how it's propped. There was this thing 7 feet high, about 15 feet in diameter. It was a domed silverish disc of some sort, and it had 3 legs that were propped underneath it, almost as if it was holding the UFO up. So it wasn't necessarily hovering above the thing, but it was actually on the ground. I guess these 3 ball-shaped legs is what they described it. Well, actually, in looking more at some of the information, it looks like maybe it was actually hovering. I don't know. It becomes a little confusing. I'll explain that here in a minute. So they actually went up straight towards the UFO. So brave little boys, they went up straight to it and they began inspecting it. They noticed that it was a metallic surface of some sort, and they had on this, whatever this thing was, it had some strange characters written, or more likely embossed, on the metallic surface. So it looked like something had actually chipped like characters straight on the metallic surface rather than, let's say, for lack of a better word, painting on the surface itself. So while they were doing this, right there, right up front to it, as close as you can get to a UFO, that's when all of a sudden there was a hatch that opened up on the side of the craft, and bizarrely enough, a ladder actually came down to the ground. I guess a ladder like you and I would characterize a ladder. And then still basically seeing, this thing open up in stunned silence, that's when they saw a quote unquote humanoid creature come out of the ship. And then they also saw, now it kind of caught them by surprise, that there was yet another humanoid creature inside the control room. So the way they made it sound was, all this time there was these things inside the craft, they just hadn't noticed it. Maybe they were just too busy inspecting the UFO itself. But once the hatch was open and they saw more along that area, that's when they saw this creature come down it, and then that's when they saw that there was something else already inside the ship, almost, I guess, looking at them the whole time. This one, though, that was inside the ship, whatever that creature was, it was the smaller of the two. The other humanoid type creature, the one that came out of the ship, it was the larger. It was described as being almost 4 feet tall. It has longer arms than, let's say, its legs. It was considered more, I guess, disproportionate that way. And it was clad in some kind of glowing, reflective silver uniform. So this ties back to something else I had talked about in my last video, where it seems like these tales that were happening in the 50s, 60s, 70s, they all had the same characteristic of like cheap suits of some sort, again, the stuff that you see in late cheap sci-fi movies. So this continues that very same theme. Now, as far as where things differentiate, it's this skin, because the entire body was covered with the suit, but the top portion of it, the face, I guess closest thing to a face, was visible. And they describe the skin of this entity as being very, very dark brown and so covered in wrinkles. I mean, we're talking like wrinkles over wrinkles, maybe wrinkles that are stretched out over one another, but so dense that they pretty much blocked anything else. So where traditionally, I guess, you would see, let's say, a brow, or you would see the indentations of maybe a chin, if this thing even had a chin, or you could see like cheekbones. No, there were so many actual wrinkles that it was completely just blocked out. Everything else, the entire head, was just wrinkles, save for a few glaring characteristics. For example, they saw that this thing was able to have eyes, because sure enough, it was inspecting apparently the terrain around it, just ignoring for these boys. I guess these boys posed no issue to whatever this creature was, so it wasn't exactly going to do anything towards them. But its most notable feature of all is it had 3 2-inch long metal fangs upon its mouth. So that's why it's called the Kofu Fanged Humanoid, because that is easily its most distinguishable feature. You don't see that type of stuff within alien encounters. If anything, you barely even see a mouth. But in this case, there it is right there. A noticeable mouth having 3 2-inch long metal fangs coming out of it. So once this creature, I guess, explored the terrain around it, and then it was done, that's when it decided to put its attention on one of the boys. And that boy, by the name of Yamahata, it put its hands on its shoulder, almost like, I guess, in a ginger peaceful like manner, patted him twice, and the way that the boys described it, there was then a series of sounds that came out of the humanoid as if a tape recorder was running, but instead backwards. You know, that bizarre, almost surreal, almost sinister type noise that a tape running backwards makes. Like if you just take any average conversation and run it backwards, how it sounds otherworldly. That's the way the boys described it. But whatever this thing did when it patted the boy's shoulder, almost like in a Spock-like motion of some sort, then that's when Yamahata collapsed to the ground. So was it just a coincidence at that very same moment? Maybe Yamahata was just getting so frightened that he collapsed out of fear? Or was it something that the alien being did, again a la Spock, when it comes to whatever this thing did on the boy's shoulder. That's still up for debate. But it was at that point that the other boy finally decided, you know what, things have gone way, way too far. That other boy by the name of Masato Kawana picked up his friend, and then they decided to go away. They went as soon as possible to, in this case, their homes. They told their mothers, each respectively, of what happened, and their mothers, rather than, let's say, taking a good whooping to them because of making up such a bizarre tale, instead they decided that, you know what, let's go and see. Maybe they believed the conviction within the boys' eyes about what was going on. So they went back to that nearby location behind the Hanode housing estate, and sure enough, the mother saw there was an orange light pulsating from that location. And this light show actually continued for a good number of minutes, about 5 minutes or so. And then right when I guess they were deciding to finally go in to try to take a much a closer look again at the UFO, that's when whatever this thing was decided it was over. And in a brilliant burst of light, so bright in fact that they described it as immediately having to avert their eyes. I guess you could call it like a stun grenade or something like that. That's when this UFO launched straight up into the air, and then it was gone, completely gone. And that's it. That's the encounter, the one known with the Kofu Fanged Humanoids. A little bit more information about what happened afterward. The two boys later told their classmates and then told their teachers at their elementary school. It was named Yamashiro Elementary School. And again, rather than, let's say, the peers there deciding that they were just making things up and just playing a prank, no, instead they believed them, because the boys began actually drawing pictures showcasing the encounter and what they look like. And also the school, with some educational authorities, whoever those may be, they decided to take a look and see and inspect that area. So the boys took them there, and sure enough, that's where they saw some physical landing marks, I guess, that could describe that the UFO was there. Apparently there was some kind of post, some kind of concrete post, two of them in fact, that were pushed over from the encounter of the UFO landing there. And the school's administrators, I guess, determined that there was no way the boys could have done that. They just weren't strong enough. They were boys, so they didn't have that strength for something like this. Also, remember I was mentioning earlier, it was kind of hard to tell if this craft was either floating or if it truly had, I guess, those legs that it was standing on, because they also described seeing some kind of quote-unquote landing traces on the bottom, I guess, of the ground. So there was a ring pattern with these landing traces, or these spots there, indicating where the UFO was sitting on. So another interesting point with that too. But that was it. Once that encounter was done, and once the exploration was done the day after, there really was nothing else in terms of other encounters with the Kofu Fanged Humanoids. But if anyone has any more information, anything else they'd like to state about this, if anyone has, I guess, more tales close to that location, or better yet, other encounters where these very, very distinct alien creatures came across, that would be awesome to hear too. So Fanged Humanoids of Kofu, very distinctive features, again, unlike anything else I've mentioned in some of my past videos. Alright everybody, thanks again as always, take care.